This occurred 7 months back, but I'm now prepared to share this tale because wow, what an experience it has been. My folks passed away in a vehicle crash on March 15th. Father was 67, mother was 64. They were heading back from their anniversary meal when an intoxicated motorist ignored a stop signal. Both perished right away. I was taken in as an infant at 6 months old, yet they nurtured me as if I were their natural child. Or that's what I believed. My elder brother and sister, Warren and Lucy, consistently handled me in a distinct manner. Warren's 34, Lucy's 32, I'm 28. During my upbringing, there were constant subtle remarks about my lack of resemblance to the relatives. How fortunate I was that our parents showed compassion. How I ought to show greater appreciation. I dismissed it as standard brother-sister dynamics, but in hindsight, the indicators were all over. The burial was set for March 22nd. I dedicated the week to organizing all aspects while Warren and Lucy were apparently too overwhelmed by sorrow to manage the particulars. I selected the coffins, composed the death notices, liaised with the mortuary, reached out to kin. They appeared to endorse my selections and departed. That should have alerted me initially. The ceremony was crowded. Mother and father had numerous acquaintances from their religious group. Father's former position at the tool shop, mother's reading circle. I delivered the tribute since Warren stated he was overly sentimental and Lucy asserted she suffered from nervousness regarding speeches in front of crowds. I spoke of how they instilled in me the importance of diligence, how they backed my commerce education, how they beamed with pride when I launched my advisory company 3 years prior. Following the ceremony, all attendees were welcomed to the residence for the gathering. I traveled with our Aunt Kelly to assist in arranging refreshments. Warren and Lucy mentioned they had to handle a brief task first and would join us shortly. We arrived at the entrance path around 4 p.m., and I instantly sensed an issue. The extra key wasn't beneath the artificial stone where it had resided for 15 years. I attempted my key in the main entrance and it failed. Kelly tested hers as well. She formerly tended their greenery during their trips, no success. I phoned Warren. He answered promptly as if anticipating the call. Warren informed me they had replaced the locks, citing protection concerns following the burial. Numerous individuals possessed copies, and they required safeguarding the property. He mentioned I could retrieve my belongings subsequently, but they had to secure the premises initially. I inquired what he implied by subsequently and when I might collect my items. Lucy seized the device and stated they were the natural offspring and required space to handle their mourning without interruptions. She indicated I could reach them in several days to schedule a slot. I disconnected, and Aunt Kelly gazed at me as though I had sprouted an extra limb. She questioned the exchange, and I relayed their words. She displayed this expression and remarked she had never grasped their capacity for meanness. The kin began appearing for the event, and we had to clarify that the dwelling was secured and entry was impossible. Uncomfortable barely describes it. Uncle Anderson traveled to Warren's residence to inquire about the situation, but Warren refused to respond at the entrance. That night around 8 p.m., I received a collective message from Warren and Lucy. It read, "Now that the performance has concluded, it's time for truthfulness. You were merely a sympathy project they felt sorry for. Adopted outsider doesn't receive from genuine kin." Warren appended another note soon after. "Mother only retained you due to remorse. Even in her final moments at the medical center, she labeled you her largest error, said she ought to have returned you when you misbehaved at age 7. Then Lucy added more. Father's concluding statements concerned his actual offspring and how he wished we'd manage economically. He didn't recall your identity in those last instants. He referred to you as that lad we accepted. I gazed at my device, reviewing these notes repeatedly. 3 years of developing my advisory firm, laboring 60-hour periods, accumulating funds, acquiring my apartment. 3 years of devising a strategy for precisely this occasion. You see, I anticipated this eventuality would arise sooner or later. I've been anticipating Warren and Lucy to reveal their authentic nature since I was 16 and eavesdropped on them, discussing how simpler their existence would become once mother and father passed, and they acquired all. I responded with a single line, "I comprehend, retain all." Warren replied instantly, "Wise decision. Avoid complicating this further," Lucy transmitted. "At last some adulthood from you. We feared you'd attempt to create issues." Then 60 minutes later, Lucy forwarded an image. It depicted them in the rear yard with flames in father's ancient steel waste container. They grasped piles of my youthful snapshots, academic portraits, creative works mother had preserved, even my secondary education certificate. The fire was already devouring all. Lucy's note with the picture stated, "Fortunate you consented. Since we already disposed of your sleeping area furnishings to fund our legacy celebration this weekend. Never reach out to this kin again. We're restricting your contact after this." Warren supplemented, "The locks are altered, your possessions are removed, and your space is vacant. You were never truly a member of this kin regardless." I remained in my apartment that evening with my computer active, examining the files I had assembled 3 years prior when I began earning substantial income. The detective's summaries regarding Warren's betting obligations. The monetary logs I had discreetly acquired displaying Lucy's charge card troubles. The professional networks I had meticulously developed. The judicial foundation I had previously established. They believed they were incredibly clever. They assumed they had triumphed. But here's what Warren and Lucy were unaware of. I had devoted years preparing for this precise circumstance. While they were drifting through their stagnant occupations and accumulating liabilities, I was constructing something far grander than they could envision. 7 days post-burial, I received a contact from mother and father's property attorney requesting my presence at his workplace for the testament recitation. Update 1. Wow, everyone. The feedback on my prior entry was amazing, and some of you predicted precisely what was impending. Kudos to the individual who suggested my brother and sister were on the verge of a massive surprise. You nailed it. So recall how I concluded the previous entry noting the property attorney contacted me. Yes, that session occurred this morning, and I'm still digesting all that transpired. I arrived at the attorney's workplace at 10 a.m. as requested. The space is in this aged structure in the city center that aromas of hide and brew. Warren and Lucy were present already, seated in these elegant seats appearing as if they controlled the venue. Lucy wore mother's gem choker and Warren sported father's costly timepiece. They scarcely glanced at me upon my entry. The attorney, Anderson Fitzgerald, is this senior gentleman who's managed legal matters for my folks since prior to my adoption. He recognized me as a youngster and always regarded me equally to Warren and Lucy in the limited encounters over the years. Anderson accessed this substantial binder and extracted the testament. He commenced with the typical juridical phrasing about stable intellect and physique and such. Warren was drumming his foot restlessly, and Lucy persistently viewed her device as though she had superior destinations. Then Anderson reached the specific allocations. He recited some minor elements first, mother's adornment assortment to Lucy, father's implements and studio materials to Warren, some funds to the religious institution and several benevolent organizations. Warren and Lucy were affirming as if this was anticipated. Then Anderson coughed lightly and stated the residence and all leftover holdings were bequeathed to me. The accepted child whom they cherished as their own and desired to guarantee was provided for after their departure. The quietness in that space was profound. Lucy's lips actually dropped, and Warren began negating with his head as if he misheard. Warren rose and informed Anderson there must be an error. He declared no possibility that mother and father would bequeath all to the adopted youngster when they possessed 2 natural kids who required that legacy. He insisted on viewing the testament paper itself. Anderson provided Warren the testament, and he began perusing it urgently. Lucy snatched it from him, and both were examining each sheet, as if seeking some escape clause or mistake. Lucy glanced up and declared this wasn't the authentic testament. She asserted mother and father had conversed with her merely last month regarding ensuring Warren received the residence as the oldest male child. She stated there had to be a more recent addition somewhere that Anderson was unaware of. Anderson clarified that this testament was from 18 months prior and had been appropriately observed and authenticated. He mentioned my folks had deliberately visited to revise it after my advisory enterprise began succeeding. Evidently, they wished to ensure I obtained the residence since they recognized Warren and Lucy were financially challenged and didn't want kin demands to compel me to dispose of it to rescue them. That's when Warren became truly confrontational. He informed Anderson that I had clearly influenced mother and father to modify their testament. He stated I likely persuaded them that he and Lucy merited nothing because I was the favored one who attended higher education and initiated an enterprise. I eventually voiced and stated I was unaware of the testament's contents until that day. I informed them I never requested anything from mother and father and developed my enterprise wholly independently. Lucy interjected and stated that was precisely the issue. She stated I behaved as if I were superior with my higher education credential and my upscale apartment. She stated mother and father became indoctrinated into believing I was more accomplished and worthy than their genuine offspring. Warren supplemented that they had both made concessions for the kin in manners I didn't comprehend. Stated when I was adopted, abruptly all the focus and assets shifted to me. He asserted he abandoned higher education to aid father at the tool shop so they could finance my exclusive schooling fees, and Lucy cared for mother during her melancholy periods while I was at university. I questioned Warren why he never disclosed he forfeited higher education for me. He stated it wasn't my responsibility to concern about kin concessions then, but now I needed to act correctly and divide the legacy fairly. Lucy concurred and stated the equitable action would be to vend the residence and split all three equally. She stated lineage kin should prioritize, and I received ample benefits during upbringing that they lacked. Anderson interposed and stated the testament was lawfully enforceable, and there was no obligation for me to distribute anything. He stated if they desired to dispute it, they would need to engage their own attorney and demonstrate improper sway or cognitive impairment, which would be highly challenging given the context. Warren questioned Anderson on the total value of the residence and remaining holdings. Anderson stated he couldn't provide precise numbers without a complete evaluation, but approximated the residence alone at approximately $400,000 with extra reserves and ventures. Lucy began weeping then. Genuine tears, not the simulated ones from the burial. She stated she had charge card liabilities and couldn't sustain her housing costs much further. She implored me to be sensible and recall that we were kin irrespective of lineage. Warren attempted an alternative tactic. He stated he grasped why mother and father bequeathed me the residence, but proposed I could secure a loan on it to provide them each $50,000. He stated that would suffice to assist them recover without necessitating a sale. I observed both of them there, frantic and beseeching, and recognized this was the instant I had been readying for since age 16. This was why I invested 3 years investigating their finances, developing my professional ties, and arranging my retaliation scheme. I informed them I required time to consider all and would respond within a week. Warren clutched my limb as I departed and stated I better act rightly for kin. But here's what they still fail to grasp. I already know precisely what I'll do, and it's not their anticipation. The actual contest is merely commencing, and they lack any notion of what's approaching. Update 2. Everyone, you won't believe what transpired when I convened with Warren and Lucy yesterday. Some of you in the responses deduced I had additional plans, and you were totally correct. This became far more chaotic and gratifying than I foresaw. So I contacted Warren 3 days post-testament recitation and informed him I was prepared to discuss the legacy matter. He instantly became enthusiastic and stated they could meet wherever I preferred. I proposed the cafe in the city center where we occasionally went with mother and father, impartial ground. They arrived 15 minutes ahead and had already requested beverages. Lucy wore this outfit I identified as one she acquired for employment discussions last year. Warren had trimmed his hair and was attired more neatly than I'd observed in months. They were obviously attempting to create a positive impact. I seated myself, and Warren began speaking right away about how thankful they were that I was open to collaborating. He stated kin should unite particularly in tough periods like this. Lucy affirmed and stated they never intended to wound my emotions with their post-burial statements. I permitted them to speak for roughly 5 minutes about kin fidelity, acting correctly toward one another. Then I extracted the binder I had carried and placed it on the surface. I informed them we needed a fully candid discussion prior to any choices regarding the legacy. I stated there were elements I required them to clarify first. Warren inquired what I meant, and I opened the binder. I removed the initial paper, which was a credit summary I had acquired for Lucy 3 months back. I pushed it over the surface and requested her to explain why she owed $47,000 on charge cards with base payments she couldn't manage. Lucy's complexion turned entirely pale. She questioned how I obtained her credit details and why I was examining her economics. She stated that was an infringement of her seclusion and not my concern. I informed her it became my concern when she and Warren chose to handle me like refuse throughout my existence, and then insist on legacy funds they didn't gain. I stated I've been observing both for years, awaiting their genuine revelation. Warren attempted to mediate and stated we should concentrate on progressing, not raising past complaints. I removed the second paper, which displayed his wagering deficits from the gaming house over the prior 18 months. $12,000 squandered on card games and betting matches. Warren stared at the document and questioned if I employed an investigator to monitor them. He stated this was deranged conduct and demonstrated I had severe confidence problems. He asserted the wagering was merely sporadic amusement, and I was exaggerating it. Lucy interjected and stated the charge card liabilities stemmed from health costs when she needed dental repairs last year. She stated she was handling 2 positions attempting to reduce it and didn't require my critique of her economic choices. I informed Warren that sporadic amusement doesn't lead to rejected payments to the gaming cashier, which I also possessed records of. I informed Lucy that health costs don't account for the $5,000 she expended at luxury apparel outlets or the $3,000 on a trip to Florida. That's when both became highly protective. Warren stated I was behaving like a pursuer, and this entire dialogue was unsuitable. He stated typical siblings don't probe each other's personal existences this way. Lucy charged me with envy that they enjoyed more in their lives while I was occupied being dull and accountable. She stated perhaps if I mastered relaxation, I wouldn't be so resentful about all. I questioned if they wished to learn why I began collecting this data initially. I described the dialogue I overheard at 16, where they plotted dividing mother and father's funds after their passing. Warren discussed vending the residence promptly, and Lucy computed the value of father's implements and mother's adornments. Lucy even quipped about giving my items to charities since I wouldn't be present to retrieve them anyway. Warren rejected ever engaging in that dialogue. He stated I was fabricating tales to rationalize my odd fixation with their finances. He asserted I was likely experiencing a psychological collapse from mourning and wasn't reasoning clearly. I extracted my device and activated another audio from 2 years prior when they assumed I was in the restroom during holiday meal. Warren was informing Uncle Anderson that I behaved as if I controlled the location and needed to recall my status in the kin. Lucy chuckled and stated at least post-mother and father's passing, they wouldn't need to feign including me. The quietness at the cafe surface extended for nearly a minute. Other patrons were beginning to glance toward us. Lucy's complexion was fully flushed, and Warren was gazing at his palms. Warren eventually stated the audio was unlawful and demonstrated I was emotionally unstable. He stated ordinary individuals don't covertly capture kin for years. He asserted this indicated I had grave mental issues and couldn't be relied upon for significant choices like legacy. I informed him I learned to shield myself because no one else in the kin ever did. I stated, when you mature knowing your siblings await your folks' demise to discard you, you begin noticing specifics. Lucy attempted a varied method and stated perhaps they all uttered hurtful things over time. She stated kin experience difficult phases and harbor resentments, but the key is acquiring forgiveness and advancing united. She stated the legacy circumstance was an opportunity for all to begin anew. I reminded him of my higher education completion, where they departed the event prematurely and skipped the celebratory meal. I raised my residence warming event, where they arrived 2 hours delayed, and devoted the time to griping about the area. I noted Lucy's marriage, where she placed me at the youngsters section with the relatives under 12. Lucy stated those were all miscommunications or pragmatic choices unrelated to their sentiments toward me. She stated I was forming patterns and schemes where none were present. She asserted I was so intent on discovering dismissal that I couldn't perceive the occasions they attempted to involve me. Warren affirmed and stated this was precisely the flaw in my character. He stated I converted every standard kin exchange into proof of some vast scheme against me. He stated sound individuals don't tally every offense or imagined affront over years. I informed them they were correct that I tally. I stated when you're informed your whole youth that you should appreciate everything because you're not truly kin, you learn to observe treatment. I stated I've been maintaining very precise tallies for years, and they were faring poorly. I extracted my device and displayed the capture application. I informed them I've been capturing our exchanges for the past 3 years during kin assemblies. I activated a segment from last holiday where Warren was grumbling to Lucy about the funds mother and father expended on my enterprise credential versus what they spent on them. Lucy reached for my device and stated I lacked authority to capture private kin dialogues without consent. She stated this demonstrated I was utterly unreliable and had been scheming to harm them for years. Warren stated this entire matter clarified why I never appeared to value kin bonds. He stated I was perpetually computing and detached, and now he comprehended I was merely amassing weapons against them. I questioned why they believed I should value kin bonds when they devoted my whole youth making me feel external. I raised particular events like when they informed their companions I wasn't their actual sibling, when they omitted me from kin images, when they persuaded mother and father not to inscribe my name on the holiday decorations because I wasn't truly kin. Lucy stated those were merely children acting childishly, and I was clinging to resentments about standard sibling competition. She stated I evolved into this retaliatory individual who couldn't release youthful matters that were irrelevant now. Warren concurred and stated the issue was, I never mastered being part of a kin because I was always tallying and seeking justifications to feel targeted. He stated authentic kin members pardon each other and proceed. I informed them they were about to discover precisely how much their youthful conduct mattered. I clarified that I had reached out to both their property owners, their charge card firms, and their supervisors over the past week. I stated I possessed considerable sway in this community via my enterprise ties, and they were going to learn how much their economic circumstances were about to shift. Warren questioned what I implied, and I informed him his property owner was highly curious about his wagering issues when I noted concern regarding his rent payment capacity. I informed Lucy her superior at the sales outlet was inquisitive about why she required numerous absences when she asserted working 2 positions. Lucy began weeping and stated I was attempting to ruin their existences over foolish youthful disputes. She stated they regretted how they handled me during upbringing and regretted their post-burial statements. She implored me to cease whatever I was scheming and simply accept the legacy funds. Warren was becoming more furious and stated I was turning into precisely the type of individual who confirmed I never fit in the kin anyway. He stated mother and father would be embarrassed by how spiteful and harsh I was toward my own siblings. I rose and informed them this was merely the start. I stated they had devoted 22 years instructing me that kin doesn't count and lineage doesn't create loyalty. Now they were going to learn what occurs when someone embraces that instruction fully. As I departed, Warren clutched my limb and stated we weren't done discussing. I informed him we were done discussing but not done with one another. Not by far, final update. Wow everyone. The responses urging an immediate update were accurate. This escalated dramatically quickly and I'm still absorbing all that occurred. Some of you foresaw precisely what would transpire and you were exact about the frantic notes. So recall how I concluded part 3 stating the actual contest was just commencing. Yes. It turns out I misjudged how rapidly things would collapse for Warren and Lucy once I began those contacts. The initial piece toppled exactly 3 days post our cafe clash. Lucy contacted me at 7 a.m. sobbing uncontrollably. She stated her superior at the sales outlet had dismissed her for falsifying her work application about prior employment record. Evidently, when I noted to him that she might not be the most dependable worker, he chose to investigate and discovered she had been dismissed from 2 prior positions for presence problems, not the voluntary departures she asserted. Lucy was shouting at me amid sobs, asking why I would demolish her position when she was already economically strained. She stated I was being harsh and spiteful over youthful resentments that were irrelevant now. She implored me to contact her superior and clarify that I was merely distressed about kin conflict and didn't intend my words. I informed Lucy that I intended every term, and this was precisely what she merited for 22 years of handling me like refuse. I stated she should have considered employment stability before choosing to incinerate my youthful snapshots and inform me I wasn't genuine kin. She disconnected, but contacted again an hour later. This time she was attempting to be tactical rather than sentimental. She stated if I assisted her regain her position, she would divide her share of any legacy funds with me evenly. She stated we could collaborate as a group and leave the history behind. I questioned Lucy why she believed I required her funds when I was the one who obtained all. She stated Warren had consulted some attorneys about disputing the testament, and they believed they had a strong argument for improper sway. She stated if I aided them now, they would abandon the juridical dispute, and we could all be kin once more. That caused me to chuckle audibly. I informed Lucy that Anderson Fitzgerald was among the most esteemed property attorneys in the region, and had been readying for precisely this type of dispute from them for months. I stated best wishes locating an attorney willing to handle their case when they lacked funds for juridical costs. 2 days later, Warren contacted me around 10 p.m. He was inebriated and furious. He stated his property owner had issued him 30 days to leave his residence. Evidently, the property owner was worried about Warren's wagering patterns after I noted it might impact his rent disbursements. Warren stated the property owner asserted needing to lease to more reliable occupants and was employing a provision in the agreement about economic unsteadiness. Warren charged me with intentionally undermining his living arrangement when I knew he couldn't finance a relocation. He stated I was attempting to render him without shelter over foolish sibling competition. He insisted I contact his property owner and retract whatever falsehoods I conveyed about his wagering. I informed Warren those weren't falsehoods. They were recorded truths from gaming logs that I possessed duplicates of. I stated if he desired reliable housing, perhaps he shouldn't have wasted $12,000 on card games in 18 months. Warren became more confrontational and stated I was demolishing his existence because I was envious that mother and father cherished their actual offspring more than their accepted sympathy case. He stated I never overcame being secondary option and was venting it on him and Lucy now that our folks couldn't shield them anymore. I questioned Warren if mother and father cherished him so much. Why did they bequeath him nothing in their testament? I stated perhaps they discerned what kind of individual he truly was before passing. Warren began shouting that I had swayed mother and father against their own natural offspring. He stated I likely persuaded them to alter the testament by fabricating about him and Lucy. He asserted I was an expert influencer who devoted years turning our folks against their authentic kin. I informed Warren that mother and father modified their testament 18 months before passing, well before any recent conflict. I stated they observed exactly who he and Lucy were and decided accordingly. I stated the only influence was Warren and Lucy devoting decades, making me feel external in my own kin. The contacts continued over the subsequent week. Sometimes it was Lucy sobbing and imploring. Sometimes it was Warren menacing and insisting. Sometimes they teamed up with both on speaker, attempting varied strategies. Lucy attempted the remorse method, discussing how we were all mourning and should unite as kin. Warren attempted coercion, stating I would regret demolishing kin bonds over funds. Then Lucy would shift to fury, charging me with being a detached planner who schemed this retaliation for years. Then Warren would attempt negotiation, proposing to divide all three equally if I would merely halt whatever I was doing to injure them. But the genuine frenzy began when Lucy lost her residence. The owner had contacted prior property owners as referrals after I noted concerns about her consistent rent payment ability. Turns out, she had delayed rent at 3 distinct locations and had been removed once for non-disbursement. Her current agreement had a provision about supplying accurate rental record. Lucy contacted me weeping at midnight stating she had no destination. She stated Warren couldn't accommodate her because he was being removed too. She implored me to permit her to reside in mother and father's residence temporarily while she planned her future. I informed Lucy that was my residence now, and she wasn't permitted there. I reminded her that she had incinerated all my youthful snapshots and instructed me never to reach the kin again. I stated she was finally achieving her desire to eliminate me from her existence entirely. That's when my private messages surged. 45 notes over 2 days from assorted mixes of Warren and Lucy. Images, audio notes, lengthy written tirades, brief frantic appeals. They were in turmoil because both their charge card firms had lowered their limits after I noted concerns about their debt ratios via my enterprise ties. The notes began frantic, Lucy composing full sections about how remorseful she was for all she ever stated or did to injure me. Warren confessing that perhaps they had handled me unjustly during upbringing, but maintaining that demolishing their existences wasn't the solution. Then they became tactical. Warren asserting he had discovered proof that the testament was falsified and menacing to pursue me legally. Lucy stating she had captured our cafe dialogue and was going to demonstrate I was bothering them. Then they became pitiful, both offering to perform anything I desired if I would merely halt ruining their existences. Warren stating he would seek therapy for his wagering if I would cease whatever effort I was conducting against them. Lucy vowing to organize her finances and improve if I would grant her another opportunity. The concluding notes were simply shattered, Warren confessing he was resting in his vehicle. Lucy stating she was at a refuge and had shed 15 pounds because she couldn't finance regular meals. Both imploring me to recall we were kin and questioning how I could observe my own siblings become without shelter. I reviewed every note without replying to any. This was precisely what I had schemed for 3 years. Every enterprise tie I had nurtured, every data piece I had assembled, every tactical bond I had formed was for this precise instant. See, what Warren and Lucy never grasped was that handling someone as an external for their whole youth instructs them to become independent. While they were relying on the notion that kin would always rescue them, I was constructing an existence where I needed no one. I devoted years observing them make awful economic choices and harmful life selections, knowing eventually there would be accountability. I knew that upon mother and father's passing, Warren and Lucy would reveal their authentic nature and anticipate me to accept it because we were kin. But I also knew their kin definition functioned unilaterally. When they required aid, we were kin, and I should assist. When I required acceptance and inclusion, I was merely the adopted youngster who should appreciate whatever remnants they provided. The elegance of my retaliation was that I violated no regulations or did anything formally incorrect. I merely ensured the appropriate individuals knew the facts about Warren and Lucy's economic situations and work records. Every property owner, supervisor, and lender made their own choices based on factual data. Warren and Lucy ruined themselves. I just ensured consequences existed this time rather than mother and father rescuing them as always before. 3 weeks post-cafe clash, I received one last note from Lucy. She stated they were relocating 2 regions away to reside with distant kin who scarcely recognized them. She stated I had succeeded, and they hoped I was content with my achievements. I was content. For the first time in my mature existence, I was fully content. Warren and Lucy instructed me that lineage doesn't create kin, and that some individuals will always view you as inferior regardless of actions. They devoted 22 years ensuring I comprehended that instruction flawlessly. I devoted 3 years ensuring they comprehended it too.